good to see you all again. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Today we're going to be talking with Jeff Lane, a business partner who works with me here in Panama. He looks at things a little bit different perspective, from a younger perspective. He's also a very, very active person. He's done a lot of things in a lot of different parts of Panama. So it's a pleasure to bring him on today to talk a little bit about the things that you can do while you're here in Panama. But first, Jeff, maybe you can tell us a bit about how you got here.
My story is different than most and similar to some others. I was visiting for a couple years. My friends were Peace Corps volunteers. They lived with an indigenous group in the jungle. So I came to visit 2, 3, 4 times and finally decided to move. So I quit my job, sold or donated everything I owned, and I moved down. And that was coming up on 7 years ago.
And you pretty much covered the country while you've been here.
Yeah, that was my whole objective when I got here, was every opportunity I had, I was exploring, finding new places, going to new places, repeating some places, but yeah, every chance I got, I was exploring Panama.
Well, things changed a lot in the last few years. I mean, there are more activities, more things for people to do now than when you first came?
Yeah, I would say so. I try to keep up and research and read everything that happens in Panama. And it's just hard to keep up with. I mean, there's so many new places and places that I've never even been to, and new hotels and new places to go and see, and it's just definitely developing quickly, and it's hard to keep up with.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know you've got quite a long list of different activities that you are aware of here, and you're going to also be sharing with people at web addresses and things of that sort. But why don't you give us a little idea of the types of different activities we've got, and maybe say a few words about each one. You've got a great list.
Yeah, I do have a list here. I mean, it really depends on what area you're in, what you want to be involved in, where you want to go. I mean, really doesn't matter what you're into, you can find it here in Panama. I'm not saying it's going to be plastered everywhere on every billboard, but you can definitely find it. And if it's something that you can't find, it's something you can start here. Being in the city, which is where I live, there are a lot of things to do. If you're into, I'm going to speak a lot about my personal experiences because it's what I like to do and that's where I have the experience. So, being surrounded by nature, being hiking, just being outdoors, and even Panama has, I believe, 58 protected parks and areas. A lot of those are close to the city. So if you want to hike Ancon Hill, there's a great view. If you want to go to the Metropolitan Park and hike, there's a great view of the city. There's Parque Omar, which is actually in the middle of the city. So there are a lot of things to do in the city. So, like I said, it really just depends on where you want to go and what you want to do.
There's plenty to do outside the city.
Absolutely there is. And it just depends, like I said, on what you're into. My personal experiences, I like to go to the beaches. I like to go to the islands. I like to be in the mountains. I like to go hiking. Some of the things that I've done that really surprised me that I fell in love doing here in Panama are the Panama Caves in Lake Bayano. I lived here for 4 years before I went out there, and it was just an experience that topped my list at that point in time. It's not for everyone. If you don't want to be in a cave, if you don't want to be surrounded by bats or walking through underground rivers, obviously it's not for you. But for me, that's something that I really enjoyed. A couple of the other things that I really enjoy doing here is in visiting the indigenous groups. I mentioned that my friends lived with one. You have various groups here, but mainly the Embera and the Guna. And spending the time out there with them, for me, is just something that really feels at home. Touches you to be able to experience a culture that's thousands of years old. And I've spent a lot of time in Gunayala or San Blas Islands. And for me, it's something that can't be missed, even if you're coming for a visit. If you're coming to Panama for a visit or you actually live here, it's just something that shouldn't be missed. Visiting either one of those groups, the Embera or the Guna, it's something that's really worth the time and effort. Another option, if you do live here or if you're spending a large amount of time here, is being a line handler on the canal. Every boat that comes through the canal, all the sailboats, have to have 4 line handlers. So if a captain arrives by himself, he has to hire, it's usually a volunteer type situation. You're on the boat for 2 days. They give you food and drink and a place to sleep. And usually will pay your way back to wherever the trip originated from. And a lot of times, you know, they'll pay you something for your time. But it's a free trip through the canal. It's basically a tour through the canal, and you know, I did it 3 or 4 times, and for me it was just something that I didn't want to pass up, you know. And it's a website here that you put your name and information on, and you know, I just got called a couple nights ago, and it's a good experience, you know. If you get the opportunity, I think you should definitely try something along those lines. I mean, there are tours that go through the canal that are very expensive. And they're partial transit, so you actually get to have hands-on experience, and you're, you know, in the canal, going through the locks, and it's definitely something that it's unforgettable experience.
And it's, you get to spend the night on the canal too.
Yeah, you do spend the night, so it's not easy. It's not something you just go and do for the day. So.
But there's a website for that.
There is a website for that. I don't even know if I have it on my list, but it's Panama Line Handlers, or I can definitely look it up. Another group here, I mean, there are groups here that do hiking that, you know, it's free. It's just groups that form, and because they all have to share the same interest. One of them is called Tribu Guarumo, and they go every weekend, and they, you know, they know so much of this land and the mountains, and they go places that I've never even heard of, and they take you to waterfalls I've never even heard of, and they just get together every weekend. And if anybody can go, and they don't, if they charge anything, it's maybe a couple of dollars per person for the guide, or it's very, very affordable.
And they have different age groups?
Oh yeah, it's everybody. It's foreigners, Panamanians, and you know, young people, old people. It just depends on the difficulty of the hike, but it's definitely a nice way to see Panama. Okay, so no matter what you're into, you can probably find it here in Panama, and I have this long list. Whether it's extreme sports, there's 4x4, Jeep 4x4s, they go every weekend, they go somewhere. We have a resort here that's dedicated to extreme sports, Nitro City. They do everything there. They have a wakeboard park, they do skydiving, wakeboarding, they have a skate park. They actually have a motorcycle track, motocross track. We actually have 3 tracks here that I'm aware of, and I believe there's a 4th one being built right now. So a lot of the Panamanians, and I guess pretty much everybody, but they have young kids, they're getting their young kids into motocross. And they're racing every weekend. What I enjoy doing, being outdoors, there's scuba diving, there's surfing, surf schools. There's even a Christian surfing group for young Christian surfers. They go out, you know, they go surfing, go different places. They have organized trips. Of course, there's runners, there's people that do the marathon, there's the hippodrome, horse racing.
Yeah, we have a racetrack.
You know, and I've been here all this time, and I'm a little embarrassed to say I've actually never been there, and it's just on the list. There's, like I said, there's just so many places to go and so much happening. Sometimes you just lose yourself, and you want to go to these places, and you don't find the time, or you just never go. But the Hippodrome is one of those places. Okay, so art museums. You mentioned art museums earlier. I've been to a couple of art museums, but I was surprised when I went to look to see the art museums that we actually have here. There were quite a few. I'm just going to read a couple here off the top of my head. The Panama Canal Administration Building has a museum, obviously. There's the Smithsonian, the only installation they have outside of the U.S. is here, the Tropical Research Institute. They also have a museum out on the causeway. I've been there a couple times. It's great for kids. Actually, it's great for anybody. Like I said, I've been there a couple times, and I'm not a kid. There's the Afro-Antillean Museum, the Panama...
Afro-Antillean is also Afro-Caribbeans. There are people who came from the Caribbean, Jamaica, and elsewhere.
The Panama Interoceanic Canal Museum, which is another canal museum. Contemporary Art Museum, the Biodiversity Museum, which just opened a couple of months ago. And it's not just museums, obviously. There's education, training classes you can take. You know, and I was looking at stuff that interests me, but there's, you know, whether it's dancing, tango, flamenco, salsa classes, I mean, they're all over the city. Some of these salsa bars have free classes, you know, before, early on, you know, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night or 7 to 8, they give free classes, or they charge, you know, $4 a person. So if that's something that interests you, learning salsa or learning to dance, I mean, you can definitely do it. They do it here.
And they have that in some of the provincial cities as well, so it's not just a Panama City affair, especially salsa.
There's also art universities, there's cooking classes, there's an art culinary college here. You know, there's what I've always been used to in the U.S. is like a continuing education classes where you don't have to be in a university. You can be an adult and, you know, have a Tuesdays and Thursdays free, sign up for a class and actually go and take it and learn. Theaters, a lot of theaters here. Even English speaking, the Theater Guild of Ancon is the English speaking theater that's been here 55 years, or roughly 55 years. There's a lot of other theaters, the names are in Spanish, but Teatro de Panama, Teatro ABA, Teatro Amador, Teatro La Cuadra, Teatro en Círculo, Fundación Opera in Panama. Actually, there's an opera here. We have a symphony, National Symphony here. So, you know, if you're into art, if you're into hiking, if you're into opera, you know, you can definitely find those things. There's also a bridge club that meets, that plays bridge every one night a week. There's bowling alleys, there's bowling clubs, there's casinos, you know, poker tournaments, or even pool halls have pool tournaments here. And, you know, the purse, the prize to win those tournaments is actually very substantial.
They even have canoe racing, or kayuko, but they're canoes, traditional canoes.
They do have canoe racing in the canal. They have a rappel club here. They go every weekend. They have rappel classes you can take. And even to spend the night at a little hotel in the mountains and take the class for a weekend, it's very affordable. Another thing I have here on my list is nonprofits and volunteering. For those of you that want to invest your time, you know, and maybe you're at home with nothing to do, you want to invest your time to help out somebody else. I have a long list of nonprofits and places to volunteer. You know, and even I read recently you can volunteer at the Biodiversity Museum. You know, if you speak English, they basically give you a class about the museum, and you actually give tours to English speakers.
That's cool.
And, you know, at the same time, obviously, you get to be at the museum, meet people, and learn, obviously, about the biodiversity of Panama. I think when it comes to volunteering, there's a site here in Panama that basically gathers all the different organizations and puts them on one site. It's called Ponte en Algo, which means put yourself in something. It means do something.
And that's going to be on your list?
Yes, that is on the list here. They list, I mean, you can go in there and put what interests you or what your strengths are, and they can put you in a position where you can be utilized. So Ponte en Algo is a very nice place to go and try to find something to do if you want to volunteer your time. Like I said, I have a list here: Casa Esperanza, Hogar Molambo, which is an orphanage. I've had a lot of friends volunteer their time there. You know, you enjoy being around kids, helping with kids.
Again, these activities exist throughout the entire country. I mean, a friend of mine, another coworker, has a group he's adopted at an orphanage. He provides school supplies for them, and Christmas gifts and stuff like that. So this, what Jeff's talking about, is not simply Panama City. You can find it all across the country. Expats are extremely active in volunteer work here. They're a very critical part of it, especially in the provinces, where there are fewer people who've got the education and background to do that sort of work. Here in Panama, the Panamanian community is the dominant one in all this activity. But out in the rural areas and the smaller towns, expats have a huge influence on getting things going and getting activities out. It's really impressive. And they do it quietly, and people don't always hear about it, but the people who live in that community value it very much, I know, because they say so.
Well, and I know at Malambo too, the people that I've met working there, they're all foreigners. Well, I also have friends that are Panamanians that also dedicate their time there, but yeah, a lot of foreigners there. And you know, like I said, I have a long list here. I think there's one in the Darien, which is the far eastern province, Pro Niños del Darien.
For children.
There's also big organizations too, like Global Brigades. It depends on what sort of commitment, obviously, you want to put forth.
It's a volunteer organization with projects, so you commit for a substantial period.
Right, and it's the same with the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps here, the Peace Corps has over 200 volunteers here that are, you know, spread all across the country in small communities. Also, the International Film Festival, it's a nonprofit organization. They bring and try to, one, bring films to Panama. Two, they try to gather up a group of Panamanians and local movie producers to do films here. So if you're into film or filmmaking, or you just want to go and watch films, I mean, it's something that happens. I mean, there's a lot of festivals too that happen here. I mean, to keep up with all the events at any given moment is really difficult, and even for someone that pays attention. Some of the festivals that do come here is the Jazz Festival that's growing rapidly.
It's in January, it's coming up in just a few weeks.
There's also, I mean, if you're into tattoos, there's 2 different tattoo festivals that come here every year, and you know, they're growing rapidly as well. I believe the last one was maybe the sixth one in a row. So there are these festivals. There's electronic music festivals that last for days. There, you know, if you're into electronic music. They also do concerts at the beach. I mean, as far as events and concerts, it's just really hard to know when they're coming. I mean, you have to really be in tune. And I think one of the biggest things too, being in Panama, is just networking. It doesn't matter what you want to do or what you want to get into. If you want to get into a group of motorcyclists, you know, if you have a motorcycle, you have to get out there and network and meet other peoples. And they have these groups, and if you have a subject that interests you and you want to get involved, you have to get out there and meet people. I mean, it's not going to come to you.
Right, absolutely. And we had a presentation here for the Ciudad del Saber to Andres, which is more on the promoting small businesses and what have you. But the Ciudad itself has been a major force in creating new activities here in Panama. And just earlier this year, we had the 3rd International Festival of Contemporary Dance. Now, you know, 10 years ago, that would never have happened here. We didn't have any sort of organization. Now, people from Finland, from Brazil, from around the world came together with Panamanians, and they put on this great festival of contemporary dance. And the Jazz Festival, that's 12 years old. It's been here through basically in this century. There's a huge community of people who really love it, and we have jazz clubs. But there's also one in David, which is at the other end of the country. Now they have an annual jazz festival out there too. So again, these things are spreading from outside the city into other parts, and in some cases you may be, if you're living outside, you may be the person who helps connect here and take that activity out. Because I know a number of people have done that, and that's really, I think, very useful to the country and to you. Give you something to do that's fun.
You know, and that's not even mentioning the folkloric festivals that Panama has. I mean, that too, we could probably do another video on all the festivals that they actually have that are throughout, you know, all the months of the year in different parts of Panama. And it's, you know, it's definitely something to experience, especially if you're here, at least if it's only once, so you know what it's like. And there are a lot of festivals. If you're into CrossFit, there's CrossFit, one of the largest CrossFit competitions in, you know, Central Latin America. They hold here in Panama. There's also, most recently, there's a lot of martial arts and training. They do martial art fights at different hotels here. You know, we just had a Panamanian that appeared on one of the UFC fight nights. So, yeah, I mean, I try to think of things to do for people that have kids, but also, you know, if they don't have kids. But, you know, that's one thing, martial arts, any sort of training, or if it's something that interests, you know, some people out there, if they want to keep in shape and do CrossFit. I mean, it's everywhere in the city.
As well as regular fitness centers and the like, which many of you probably already are associated with.
And the last thing I really have on my list here that I want to go over is, I know a lot of people ask about it too, is buying organic. And I know we brought it up in other videos, and there are, I mean, we have home delivery. You can buy organic food here, organic beef, organic chicken, fruits and vegetables. And there's, you know, I have 3 different places here that you can buy them from. They will come deliver to your home. Just want to mention them. We're going to give the links later, but New Earth Panama is one of them. Panama Food Box Delivery is one of them. And you make your order and they'll bring it to your doorstep.
We have also for fish. I just came across that group recently, that they have fresh seafood, and they will bring it to, and they'll even take it out to some of the areas in the countryside where there are substantial numbers of expats and Panamanians who want that sort of service. Yeah, I mean, and organic food is huge, very big. Panamanians are very, very, very interested in that. Anything that has to do with health and better living. It's got a huge community here. Pilates, if you want to, if you like Pilates, there must be 25 Pilates centers here in town. So, and that too is scattered around the country. Health is important to Panamanians, and they take it seriously just as expats do. So if you're into that, you're not going to have any trouble adjusting here.
You know, and I think that's also too been a focus of all the videos that we've done and the speakers that we've had is, you know, to be open-minded and be able to adapt. You know, if people come here with something in their mind that it's going to be a certain way, and I think if you're just open-minded and you can adapt, you know, you can definitely find anything that you want to be involved in to occupy your time.
You can probably get started.
Yeah, exactly.
Already, if you just let the word out in the community, so to speak.
Yeah, you know, if it's something that you love to do and you're, you know, back home, you have friends and you guys do it once a week, and maybe you can't find it here. I mean, you could definitely start it here, or you know, it may take some work, but you could start it.
You're in a society which is dynamic, and the economy's been growing now very strongly for a decade. People have more disposable income available to them, and now for the first time are able to go out and do things that they weren't able to do before, or they simply couldn't afford the equipment or one thing or another. Now they can, and that, I think, has had a lot to do with what's been an eruption of activity as people are finally getting out there and being able to do what they really couldn't justify doing financially 10 or 15 years ago. Now it's, you know, they can, and it's part of their lives. And so the transition has been dramatic and fast here, and I recognize that desire has long been here. Now we're getting the resources because the money's here, now the resources come, and you have all sorts of things opening up. The feedback loop is very positive, and every year we get more and more stuff happening. So there won't be a dull moment here. If you want to go out and find activity, it's there.
You know, and I think we tried to keep this non-touristy, you know, not touristy places, but sometimes it's hard because when you have a place that's worth visiting somewhere in Panama, obviously it's gonna, or anywhere, it's gonna turn into a tourist attraction. But you know, I worked in internal tourism here in Panama and still do occasionally, so I think if, you know, you guys have questions, if there's somewhere you want to go, if there's something you want to do, you know, I can definitely point you guys in the right direction.
Oh boy, you're out of trouble now.